We have been married for 47 years. Both of us grew up in Catholic schools, grade school and high school. When I was in grade school and high school, we certainly, the sisters and the priests in our parish certainly talked to us about vocations, both for priesthood and religious life and for marriage. And they talked about marriage as a vocation. We didn't really understand much about what that meant at the time. And so through the rest of grade school and high school, I didn't really think too much about what was my vocation, or sometimes we call it a state in life at the time. So after getting 2 degrees, I came to Michigan State for graduate school. And as I was a graduate student here, I happened to go on a retreat at St. John's. That got me really thinking about how important the importance of God in a relationship with Jesus in my life. From that, not too long after that retreat that I was on, a friend who I met on that retreat introduced Karen and me to each other at a prayer meeting at St. John's. It was held in the basement of St. John's. We really didn't have much contact after that for a long time, for a number of months. But in the meantime, I was started to think more about, what does God want me to do with my life? Should I become a priest? Should I really seriously consider priesthood? Or should I consider marriage? I started talking to a woman that I had met who was much more farther along in a relationship with Jesus than I was. And she and I decided to pray about this together for about 6 months. We were not in a relationship. I was just trusting her as a sister in the Lord. And so after about that 6 weeks, my conclusion was clearly that I should be married. About 2 weeks after that, I had a dream. And in that dream, I dreamt that I met a woman named Karen who was blonde. And at that point, I'll leave it up to Karen now.
Well, like Deacon Jim said, I grew up in Catholic schools, and I actually thought that I had a vocation to the religious life. And I actually looked up, I studied what the sisters did, and I thought that it was really cool. And then a number of things changed when I was in high school. A lot of the things in the church changed, and the way that the sisters lived changed. And it was not as appealing to me anymore. But I kept wanting to follow God, and so I kept praying about this. I dated a few guys during my college years, and as Jim said, we met in the basement of St. John's after a prayer meeting, and there was something about him that was very attractive. And then I started praying about that, and I actually asked God for certain signs. I asked him to help me to see if this was the man that he intended for me to marry and to spend the rest of my life with. And every time I asked God, so if you want me to marry him, have him do this, or have this situation work out. And every time it did. And so I saw God's hand in our relationship, and that led us to getting married. And
the common element in our relationship, both through our engagement and all throughout our marriage, has been that God is really a part. God is one of the persons in our marriage relationship, and that's one of the things that's held us together through, everybody has family struggles and challenges in their work, their career, all of these things. But having God in our relationship was really fundamental. And we are so glad to be a part of this parish, and we've been here ever since we were married in 1973. This crucifix and Jesus on the cross, this is the example of what God is calling a man and woman to in married love. To give 100%. Jesus, with his arms outstretched on the cross, gave his life for sin. That's the same outstretched 100% selfless love that Jesus is calling a man and a woman to do for each other in order to help each other get to heaven. Just a little bit about my diaconal vocation. So the permanent diaconate was restored in the church after Vatican II. I knew about it. I didn't really think about it very much until a priest in our parish, Father Andy Tchaikovsky, who's at St. John's in Davison now, is a pastor there. He was at our parish at the time, and one day out of the blue, he comes up to me and says, "Jim, have you ever thought about the diaconate?" I really had not thought about it, but literally within 2 to 3 weeks after that, other people in the parish who I had never talked to about the diaconate came up to me and said, "Have you ever thought about it?" I met with Father Doug Osborne, who was the director of the Office of Deacons in 1979, and I was ordained a deacon in 2009. There's a whole backstory to that. We were having our family at the time. There's a lot of preparation. We didn't want to take away from our children and being with them for me to be preparing to become a deacon. But at a certain point, as we continued to pray about it through all of those 30 years, it came apparent to Karen and me both that that's what God was calling me to. So I was ordained here at St. Thomas Aquinas, May 16th, 2009.